Good afternoon. Welcome to continued programming in Metropolitan Community College's Black History Month celebration. My name is Barbara Velasquez. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to watch a documentary that highlights American history that generally was not shared in our classrooms. Your microphones and chat with other audience members are turned off. Send questions to moderator Barbara Velasquez at any time for the discussion after the film. I will present your questions to our discussion leader. Also, please watch for a link in the chat for an online evaluation. We so appreciate your feedback. I am delighted to welcome a Metro colleague as our discussion leader. Eldridge Rick Bell was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. He began his post-secondary journey by receiving his BS in biology from Lincoln University in Jefferson City. He then went on to later receive his MA in business management from Bellevue University. Rick's grandfather, Richard Smith, was a major influence in his pursuit of higher education. Mr. Smith attended Shorter College in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1917. He was unable to complete his studies due to being drafted into World War I, but he retained a very high level of math skills and was fluent in French well into his 70s. Rick previously spent 27 years at the Kellogg's Company in Omaha, Nebraska in production management. After retiring from Kellogg's, he dived into his passion for education and became an adjunct instructor at Bellevue University, where he taught graduate level operations management. He has served Metropolitan Community College in various roles: associate academic advisor, adjunct instructor in social science, and most recently, enrollment program specialist. He is now serving as an academic advisor in business and IT at Metro's South Omaha campus. In Rick's spare time, he enjoys watching various sports, loves him some jazz, and plays golf. Above all, he loves spending quality time with his family. Please welcome Mr. Rick Bell, who will introduce today's documentary.
Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate that. What you're about to see is a part of American history that is often forgotten and overlooked. This award-winning film documentary captures the heroics and bravery of a group of African-American soldiers who served during World War II, known as the Buffalo Soldiers. They faced insurmountable odds fighting honorably for a country that refused to fight for them. The name Buffalo Soldiers was first given to African-American cavalry regiments of the U.S. Army from 1867 to 1896. They were charged with removing Native Americans from their lands for the westward expansion. The name Buffalo Soldiers was given by these Native Americans. There were several assumptions as to why, but none have been confirmed. The opening scenes of this documentary are graphic and may challenge your senses, but I feel that they are necessary to set the tone for the remainder of the documentary. I would like to acknowledge those in our viewing audience who have served and possibly are serving in the military, and we'd like to thank you for your service. I will ask that all that are viewing keep in mind a scene or scenes that impact you the most and why. Now, it is my honor to present to you Inside Buffalo.
So thank you to everyone who's with us here, and thank you to Joe, who's been managing and taking care of any little things that come up with technology. I appreciate questions that are coming in. First of all, I'd like to say we're very thankful that Mr. Rick Bell is with us here today. This is a strong interest of his, but we want to remind you with the questions that he is not a scholar of history with credentials on Buffalo Soldiers. So if you can, you're doing a great job with your questions, but we will all understand if any of the answers are we're going to try to find that answer and get back to people. Send your email through the chat. But first question, and I think a lot of people will really resonate with this. When will we learn? This recent backlash and renewed attitude of racist behaviors, not including Blacks and other people of color, the demonstrations regarding critical race theory and school boards. What are your thoughts, Rick?
What are my thoughts? I don't know. That's a difficult question. We can only continue the effort to educate people, because I think a lot of the attitudes that we're seeing today are based on ignorance, and that's unfortunate. I was always taught that if you didn't know something, ask someone or try to learn more about it rather than form an opinion. So that's about the best answer I can give, is continue to educate people on the differences among us, because they truly help to make us a better people.
Thank you. So you had asked, Rick, for people to think about what scene impacted them the most.
Right.
And one of the comments we have is, this was a statement by both soldiers, or one of them, when we got home from the war and we still had to sit in the back of the bus.
Right, right.
I really appreciated seeing and hearing the insight of the Italian soldiers as they worked toward freeing their land of the Nazis. But I'd like to know more about what basic training was like for Buffalo soldiers as opposed to white soldiers. Was it more intense and cruder and meaner?
I think it's safe to say that it was. You know, when we heard the comment about them training from 6 in the morning to 8 or 9 at night, that's truly, from what I understand, like I said, I've never been active duty, but I've had, my brother spent some 27 years in the Army, spent 3 tours in Vietnam. And everything I know about the military is that is not normal to train, you know, that intensely. It was as if they were trying to weed out a number of the Black soldiers. So the training, I think it's safe to assume, and if there's anyone that wants to comment on it, feel free to do so. I think that the training was definitely different and more intense and more severe.
What did you think of at least the initial ruling that only white Southerners could be responsible for the training of the Buffalo soldiers?
Well, I think that was typically an effort to maintain control, to allow those that would definitely treat the Buffalo soldiers more severe than others an opportunity to continue the discriminatory practices that were prevalent at that time.
Thank you. We're wondering if there was a scene that impacted you more, Rick, than other parts of it, or several.
The scene that always grabbed me in the documentary was when President Clinton placed the Medal of Honor on Lieutenant Vernon Baker, and seeing his emotion, as well as the emotion when he returned to Tuscany and was so embraced by the Italian that had went on patrols with them. Those were perhaps two of the most, there were a number of them, but those were two of the most impactful scenes to me.
So Rick, going back to some of your background, you worked in different types of environments,
Sure.
industry and education. You've learned from your grandfather, from people around you. What was interesting was that Italians initially saying that they were really frightened of the Black soldiers when they first saw
Sure.
them.
Yeah.
And then you see what you just described at the end. So from your life experiences, what does that say to us about getting to know each other and how we go about that rather than isolating our lives because of differences that we have?
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks to the, you know, we can't always depend on what others say about any one group. We have to learn for ourselves. And oftentimes our opinions are formed by media, which in this case was very strong and was still strong today. People don't, in my mind, don't make an effort to really learn about someone before they form an opinion based on misinformation.
So true. Yeah. Once again, have times really changed?
They have changed to a certain degree, but I think, and I'll just be honest, I think the last 4 years shows us, and today shows us, that we still got a long way to go. A long way to go.
We have a comment that's come in. I learned from the film that in healthcare, there were misconceptions about having to keep a heavier time frame with Black patients.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder people of color have developed worse outcomes. Working in healthcare in this area, this is something we have to address.
Oh yeah, there's huge disparities in healthcare, have been and still exist today. Some of them may be economic in terms of not being able to afford the better healthcare, but a lot of them are discriminatory in terms of making assumptions about African Americans as opposed to others and their health. So there are many cases that I'm sure some of our viewers can point out where African Americans aren't treated equally in the healthcare profession as others.
What is your perspective on sending a group of soldiers out without ammunition?
Suicide. One word, simple. You know, it's a definite formula for failure. That's having total disregard for the welfare of those soldiers.
So whereas the Black soldiers said, we put our personal feelings behind to concentrate on the war, their leaders did not do the same in many cases.
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, and that speaks volumes, that you can put what you're facing from your superior officers who are predominantly white aside, along with the conditions that you left when you left the United States to come to fight a war. So it's very, very difficult to imagine how you can effectively put those feelings aside to focus on the mission.
And we have a comment that rather than suicide, one of our audience members would call that homicide.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That would be a better term. It would be homicide. It would, it's not something that they had control of.
Right. I mean, it also speaks to the tenacity of the soldiers that
absolutely
came out alive.
Yeah, to be able to still, fight bravely and honorably in spite of all the conditions that were against them.
I will say that I really enjoyed listening to the gentleman that said he caused so much trouble.
Oh yeah.
As advisor to the presidents.
Yeah.
And then later you see Clinton doing the beautiful ceremony, but I'm thinking,
Yeah.
you're only doing that because you got harassed.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's going to always be the case. You're only going to get from people what you make them do. Very few people, if any, will voluntarily do the right thing. You've got to almost have a cattle prod in their back all the time to get them to do what's right.
That's such a sad statement. And we need to educate and develop more people that would do the right thing.
Right.
The right thing, right?
Right.
So yeah. I love the statement. They were willing to sacrifice for freedom, even when the freedom's fullness was denied to them.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was a true statement. I mean, I made mention of that, that they fought honorably for a country that refused to fight for them.
So somebody put in, okay. Clinton did not hug the medal recipients.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that we saw there? I don't know if that's something that people knew in history, even though he said those things, he didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't, and I guess I have not seen enough of those Medal of Honor ceremonies to know that the president always hugs them. I think he always shakes their hand, maybe put his hand on their shoulder, but I don't know that, he always hugs them.
Well, that's something for us to explore, right?
Right. I mean, I think it was huge that he even decided to honor them. That was a huge step in and of itself because it hadn't been done. And now we're talking 1997 and the war was over in 1946. So that's almost 50 years.
I would say I'm thankful that they were still alive.
At least some of them were still alive. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I did find that Lieutenant Baker, who did receive the Medal of Honor in 1997, he passed away in 2010.
So I think that is going to take care of most of our questions. And as was stated on the documentary, we have a veteran reminding us that the Medal of Honor is almost always awarded after a person's death.
Right. Most of the time it is. That I do know. Yeah.
So Rick, as we're coming to an end here, do you have any final comments for our audience about?
About the only thing that I discovered was the fact that you saw a number of actors having comments during the documentary. That was as a result of Spike Lee was doing a movie in 2008 in Tuscany, Italy, about the 92nd Division that fought in World War II. And a number of those actors that were in that movie had parts in this documentary.
And we have a question that I have a feeling might become one of those for research, but this being a film that's very enlightening, and we see African Americans and Japanese were segregated from the other soldiers, wondering what the status of Native Americans and Latinos was. Do you know?
That would take some research. I'm not sure, Native Americans, from what the little bit I have heard, were some of the best, I won't say spies, but they were the best scouts to go and search out where the enemy were during World War II and subsequent conflicts like Korean War. They just had an innate ability to be able to get into certain areas that other ethnic groups were unable to do. So I knew they were one of the best ethnic groups as far as scouts in World War II. But as far as Hispanics. I'm not sure about that one. Yeah.
Right. Well, I want to thank everybody again, and thanks so much, Mr. Rick Bell. He could have continued his really important work on a daily basis of helping students to move forward with their education, their careers, but he's taken the time out to explore this documentary, to share with us today, to put himself out there with a lot of his colleagues around. That's sometimes the hardest thing to do, I think. So I really, really appreciate it, Rick. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Joe, could you please put up our evaluation slide? There we go. We do appreciate feedback from everybody on the evaluation, and that address is in the chat. Try to get it up once more before we shut down here. And then would like to remind everybody that we have one more official Black History Month program. It will be this Thursday evening. So if you get off at 5, or if you know, even if you're working and you have a chance to click on a Zoom link, we'd love to have you join us. We have had marvelous speakers and historical presentations. And on Thursday night, we are going to enjoy learning from local African-American authors who are going to share about their literary works. We're really excited to have 11 authors that evening. If you'd like more information, you can contact me or go to mccneb.edu/Black History. And the last program will give you a little bit more details. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, thank you.